Hey, so I want to show you how I make the simple color system for generator using generator. And this goes from concept to code. So to begin with, I have a few data types. There's text. So there's number, which is blue. There's text, which is yellow. There's shapes, which everything to do with shapes is red. And I have flow nodes, which are have to do with the flow of data, and they're like they kind of do everything else. So blue, yellow, red, and gray. Also, I have two states for each of these colors. So in general, you have active nodes and you have inactive nodes. So like I can make this one active, I can make this one active, and this is typically useful for shapes where I can have a rectangle, and then I can rotate that rectangle. But if I want to see the rectangle at this stage, I'll activate this. And if I want to see it at this stage, I'll activate this. And if I want to see both, I'll shift activate, and then I can see both. So this is a way of like debugging and seeing the stages of your graph. And then recently they're useful not only with shape nodes. So there are these two types of colors, active and inactive. And they have to be sort of dimmer than the active color relative to or respective of the color mode. So if it's in light mode, they have to be lighter. And if it's in dark mode, they have to be dark. So kind of standard stuff. Initially, I picked them by eye, and I polished them over the course of a few months so that they're like exactly how I feel they should be. But I thought it would be interesting to actually make the system so that I don't have to redo it. And then if in the future I'm going to add group nodes, which are going to be green, and then maybe there will be other data types like images, which I don't support right now, which might be like orange or something. Then I don't want to do it by hand or by eye. I want to have a system take care of it. So there we go. I have these nodes, which I'm going to turn into color nodes. So I'm going to have 4 color nodes like so. And then over here in my code, I have the actual values that I picked by hand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the number value and try to work out, or the number type, and try to work out a system which can then automatically work for all the other types. So active number dark is this. And in fact, I think I'm just going to leave it like this for now. So this is my color. Another thing I need is the background color, because I'm going to be interpolating between them. This will be found in over here. I have it in CSS, and Figma dark is 25, 25, 24. So there we go. So this is the background color, which as you can see blends in, and this is the number, active number node color. So I think I want to blend. So I'm going to take a blend node. I'll do, let's say 50%. And then I'm going to compare. And so I need to find some kind of a blend. This isn't working because this math is giving me a warmer dark blue than this. This is cooler. So I think instead of blend, I'm going to use interpolate, because that has a little bit more flexibility as far as color spacing. So I'm going to try to go through some of the color spaces that I have to see if it is any better. So this is pretty good in P3. So I like Rec 2020. This seems to have my aesthetic sensibilities. So okay, this is how I get the number, but I did this by hand, and this is not great. What I think I want to do is I want to pick a color that is a certain distance from the background color, like perceptual distance. So the way I do this is I get a color difference node and I plug in these two colors, the background and the interpolated color. And this will normally give me some kind of a difference value, right? So what I would like to do is I would like to pick this automatically to match a certain distance from the background. So let's say right now it's 9.7. I would like to pick this automatically so that it becomes 9.7. So the way I do that is I use a solver. I plug in the current distance in here. I plug in the desired, or I type in the desired distance in here. And then I say that I want to affect the percentage using the solver. And so what it does is it adjusts this parameter so that this gives this value. So as I adjust the target, the interpolation amount changes. And so I'm going to get it to, well, we found that it was 9.7. So let's say that the target here is going to be 9.7. So this is basically my little graph to determine the passive color from the active color. Let me see if I can generalize this a little bit to have all the colors. So I'm going to grab this, I'm going to put them through a select, and then I'll plug that into the color, into the right, I actually need all the colors. Yeah, I keep making this mistake. These are numbers, text, and stuff. So I need to get this. So I copy this 4 times, and I actually have to go and get my colors. So for example, if these are all activated, these are the colors that I need. I can get them from my code. So active number dark I have, active text dark is this. Active shape dark is this, and active float dark is this. And so I pick them by hand. I don't want to do this. I mean, these are picked by hand anyway, but then this should be automatic. So now I can select from these and plug this in here. And then depending on the color that I select, it gives me a different text value. So I actually want to see all of these at the same time. So instead of select, I'm going to take an iterate. Plug this in here. So for now it's blue, but I'm going to repeat this. So the interpolated color is going to get repeated. And I'm going to run the iterate into the repeat to have the loop. And then I'm going to see the items, the items that come out of the end. So right now I'm repeating it once, so I have to repeat it 4 times. And there we go. These are my faded colors that each time they use a solver, and each of these colors is exactly 9.7, whatever this is according to the algorithm, away from the background color. So visually they should be this exactly different or equally different. To check this, I'm going to get 4 color nodes. I'm going to plug these in. And I'm going to take my inactive nodes and just put them next to the colors that I generate. So the blue is going to be fine because I set it up like that. The yellow is not bad, but it's not exactly what I had picked. The red is so it seems like 9.7 is a little bit too dark. So I'm gonna make this 10. or maybe 11. So this is closer. Still not perfect. They're a little bit too saturated, but closer. But let's say I'm happy with this. So these are colors that are visually equally distant from the background. They're pretty close to my aesthetic sensibilities. So I'm gonna delete this. I don't need these anymore. Okay, so this is my basic color system for my nodes. Now, this is for dark mode. Let's check out light mode. Okay, so obviously this doesn't work. Well, that's because I have a dark background. So what I need to do is I need to go to my code, to the, what is it, document CSS, and get the Figma light body, which is this. Put this in here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two nodes. I'm going to call this light back. No, back like this, light, so it's a bit more visible, and back, dark. I'm going to use an if-else node. This doesn't auto-connect yet. There we go. With if-else, this is the false, this is the true, and then you choose which one by changing the parameters. So I can plug this in directly here, and I can plug the same thing in here. So now the background color depends on this. And there's a bug here where the result of the repeat is one update behind the solve, but you just activate one of the results and it works. So I'll fix this before the update. So if I say the dark mode is false, I get basically the right colors. And we can try this. Whoops. We can get a number node, a text node, a shape node, and a flow node. Deactivate them all and put them next to this. And again, these are colors that I polished over the course of a long time, and I'm really, really happy with them. But my math doesn't correspond, so it works fine in dark mode. It doesn't work fine in light mode. Maybe it has to do with the distance from the background. So it seems like the distance has to be less, maybe 8. And for now, I always need that final double click. Yeah, this actually looks pretty good, except for this, but that's because I'm using the wrong colors. So these are good. So actually what I need to do is I need another set of numbers. I need to have an 8, which is the light mode target. So I'm going to say light target, or light difference. So difference light. And then I'm going to have 11, which is what we had for dark mode. And this is going to be difference dark. Again, here I'm using an if-else. So if this is true, it goes to dark, and then I plug this into the target. So right now it's supposed to be light mode. But an interesting thing is now we have two parameters that depend on if it's light mode or dark mode. So for this, this can be unified with a new Boolean number node that is going to be available in the update. It's basically a number node. It's still 0 or 1, but it's a checkbox. So it's a little bit more visually clear. And then you just plug this in here, and you plug this in here. We're going to call this dark mode. And so I'm going to disable dark mode. So now if I enable dark mode and I go into dark mode, the colors are correct. There, I just have to double click one final time. I'll fix this, but there you go. And then if we go into light mode, I can switch this, do the final double click, which is a bug, and get the correct values here. And so here I'm choosing the background color and the visual difference from the background color that I would like with one switch. So this is how I handle dark mode and light mode. The other thing that's not working is this is not correct, because actually if you look at the at something like a flow node in light mode, I made it darker. It made sense to have it be dark. And it's also slightly different for the text node. If you take the text node, it's a little bit more bright than this color. So essentially, to have a full system, I need to double this up. And for each color, I need to have two colors. Right? I need this, I'm going to call number dark. No, I'm going to call this number light. This dark comes second because it's 1. Number dark. Same thing here. I'm going to have two texts. This is going to be called text light, and this is going to be called text dark. Then this is going to be called shape light and shape dark. And this is going to be called flow light and flow dark. So I go into my code now. Active flow light is this. Active shape light, I think it's the same. Active text light is a little bit different. And active number light is also a little bit different. It's a little brighter. Okay, so now each of these can be connected with an if-else. I need some more quality of life stuff for these connections. Maybe I will do that in the future. Whoops. And so now for each of these, I replace the old connection with the new one. So it may seem a little bit tedious, but actually it's not that much work and it's not that complex. It's, you know, it's pretty simple. Now all we need to do is to bring this over here and plug this value into the condition for all these initial colors. Okay, so this is basically the color system, and so now we can see that it's a lot closer. And it's really damn close, because now I'm choosing the right seed colors, which I did pick by hand, but then everything else happens automatically. So this is determined by dark mode, this is determined by dark mode, and this is determined by dark mode. Then I go back to dark mode. I switch this on. And there you go. You get basically what I picked by hand, like really, really, really close. I'm surprised how Rec 2020, how close it is to the way it looked good to me personally. But you have a lot of options for how to, you know, I did this retroactively. Maybe this is not how you would do it, but the point is that you have a lot of options in how to set up your system. Now, this is not all. I'm not going to talk about variables in this video. I'm going to do separate videos about that. But I would like to have all this information available to me in code because, you know, this is finally where I'm going to use it. So, okay, I do have the hex values. Let me get rid of this. It's not necessary anymore. I do have the hex values, but I don't really want to, you know, do like find this number dark and like paste this in. It's not effective, right? I would like this to be automatic. That's cool. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take, let's say, this as my template. I'm going to bring this into a text node. And so now I'm going to duplicate it and just do something else. I'm going to replace each one of these parts with basically anything. But in this case, let's do like $1. It can be curly braces 1 or curly braces, like it really can be anything. I just think, well, let's do curly braces. It'll be visually clear. So I can do RGB curly braces 1 and then curly braces 2 and then curly braces 3. And then here for the color, we do curly braces 4. So what I'm doing is I'm taking this piece of code and I'm creating pattern. Right. With this pattern, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a replace node. And I'm going to replace, in fact, several times. So here I'm going to replace curly braces 1 with something. I mean, I think you see where this is going. Here I'm going to replace curly braces 2. I'm going to copy it like this, connect them, curly braces 3, and curly braces 4. Like this. And then I'm going to have another text node over here with the result of this. So right now it's just RGB nothing, hex to RGB nothing. Okay, great. So the first thing I need is to replace, let me move this over here. The first thing I need is, how do I define it in the code? I have it either active or nothing. So I need a text box with active and nothing. And something I do in Generator, if you type like a space, I show it in the background just so that you know if there's a space or nothing. But also if it's just an empty line, you do see like a thin line to indicate it. If there's not an empty line, then there's nothing. So I feel like this is convenient. So this way you see that it's active and nothing. What I do with this is I split it with a new line. And then I select, or actually here I do an if else. No, I don't do an if else. I do a select from list. So I have 2 values that I can select from. And this is what then replaces curly braces 1, because it's RGB active number light. So this is active or nothing, and I plug it into this. I replace curly braces 1 with this. So now in my result, it's RGB active. The next thing I need to do is active number. So I need this. But here it's going to be not active and nothing. It's going to be instead number, text, shape, flow. So this gives me 4 values, and I can replace curly braces 2 with this. So now I get RGB active number. So I'm reconstructing this slowly. Then it's light or dark. Okay. So same thing. I copy this. Then I replace all of this with light and dark. And then I replace curly braces 3 with this. I have RGB active number light equals whatever. And the last thing that I do is I'm going to remove this repeat. We don't need this right now. I'm going to take this interpolated value, which is my result. And also here, I'm not sure if I'm going to iterate. So for now, I'm just going to take this number directly, the color value. And I'm going to take the interpolated result. I'm going to use a color to text node. So I'm going to plug it in like so. And I'm going to choose, so if I plug it in directly, then the result becomes hex to RGB without the hash. So I want it with the hash, and here I can choose CSS hex. The difference is just the hash. Like in others, the difference is more profound, but here it's just the hash. So I do this, and I have this. Some people might like to have lowercase hex values, so that's easy to do. You just select this and insert a case node and select lower. So now in your code, you have your correct variable name and then the properly formatted according to you hex value, or according to me in this case. So now I can remove this. And what we need to do now is cycle through these and select the appropriate values for these. So let's do that. The first thing I would like to cycle through is the type. No. How's my code structured? I want to mirror my code. So first I do number. So first I do active, passive, then I do type, then I do dark mode. I guess that's what I'm going to do here. So the first thing I'm going to loop is active, passive, which I'm going to do by using a sequence node. I'm going to choose now how am I going to do this? Well, I think the first thing I need to do is a type so that I cycle through these correctly. Okay, so right now it goes from number and it just does the number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all these and add a select and then plug that in here. So now I can choose which type I'm making the colors for. And I can loop this by using a sequence node on one side. So I plug this into the index. And I need to render something on the other side. So I'm going to render this text. So, or rather repeat, not render. I'm going to repeat this text. I'm going to plug this or loop this into this first repeat, just to keep things explicit. And so this is our first loop. I guess I can do this. No, this is fine. And to see the output of the loop, I'm going to take an items. Right now there's just one. There we go. Okay, I can do this. I have to loop this however many of these there are. So maybe an even easier way to do this, because I need to count them somehow, is I need to get them into a list. So I'm going to get them into a list. Then I'm going to say select from list. So now it's the same as it was before. The sequence goes into select from list. So it's literally the same as it was before. But now I can also count the list, or the size of the list. So I say count. And so from here, you take the repeat count. Okay, there we go. So now all of this is the same, but you see that the color values are different. So now we just need to iterate all of this stuff. First of all, if we're using a sequence to select the color, we can also use the same sequence to select the color or the type name, which happens here. So now we have RGB active number light, RGB active text light, RGB active shape light, and RGB active flow light. Except I have a suspicion that these are actually dark values because dark mode is enabled. And so I'm supposed to take this and plug this into the selector for the mode name. Not in here, the selector. And this is supposed to say not one, but light and dark. So now because dark mode is selected, I have in here RGB active number dark, but these are separate items. So I don't want that. What I want is to take this and to join the text. And I want to join it with a new line. And then if I look at the output, I have basically just code, which I can now copy paste into my code editor. But this isn't over because in the way I have it is I have RGB active number light and then I have RGB number light. So now inside of each of these, inside of this loop, I need to do a smaller loop where I iterate over the active or inactive state. So now I need to take this selected color. I need to group it with, or rather, I guess I'm going to use an if else. And then the inactive color goes in here. So that's false. And the active color goes in here. So that's true. And I need another sequence. So I'm going to call this type sequence. And this is going to be the active sequence. It's going to drive, and the sequence starts with 0 and adds 1 every time. So it's like an indexing sequence. This is going to drive this selection, which determines if it's active or active or inactive. Let's say passive. And it's also going to drive the selection of word, which is over here. And now this needs an intermediate repeat. Like so. And this new sequence is going to be looped onto this repeat. And the reason I do that is now I have, like, let me make it a little bit bigger. Now I have a sort of explicit system where if I do it like this, I can see that there's the inner loop and then there's the outer loop. So I need to repeat this twice. And actually I can, well, I can just do it by hand here because I know that there's only 2 of them, but I could also get a count and like do it automatically. And so now I have RGB active number dark and then RGB number dark, which is exactly what I have in my code, but the values are different. I mean, they're not different, they're the same, but they should be different. Meaning that I need to choose my colors correctly, and which I do, except I need to now pass this choice to the color to text node instead of the original color. And so now when I go here, I'm going to have the correct colors. So RGB active number dark, RGB number dark, RGB active text dark, RGB text, and so on. And we're still not done because now we need to repeat this, but make it light. So this is going to be an outer loop. So there's going to be another repeat. It's going to repeat twice. I'm going to plug this in here directly, and I'm going to plug this in here directly. So now we're going to see all 8 lines of code. But now it's just 2 copies of the same code, essentially. Let's bring this over here. Join. Okay. So now it's basically 2 copies of the same code. That's because we need another indexing sequence. This one we're going to call dark sequence or mode sequence. And this will be plugged into here, the dark mode selection, because that then selects everything else. And this will be looped into the outer repeat, like so. And so now as a result, we have RGB active number light, RGB active number dark. And all the values seem correct. And what we're going to do is we're just going to test it. So I'm going to copy and paste it in my code. So instead of this, I paste what I just generated with generator. Now I'm going to reload the plugin. And the colors seem to be backwards. They are backwards because this is the active and that's the passive. So I did it backwards. I did it incorrectly here. This becomes the passive rather. Right, because in my box, this is active and this is passive. Well, that's just a quirk of how I wrote code. But okay, now I'm going to copy paste this again. And this now looks more correct. So I have number nodes, which are active and passive. I have flow nodes, which are active and passive. I have text nodes, which are active and passive. And if I switch mode, it all works. And all these colors are calculated automatically. And the handoff is really easy. So essentially you have this part of the graph for your designer to, or for the designer to come up with the system. And this part of the graph for the handoff to the coder. And I honestly think this is a really simple graph. I mean, okay, it took me, what, 20 minutes, but that's all it took. And now if I want to add a third or a fourth color, which I'm going to do eventually because I am working at the same time on group nodes so that you can collapse nodes into just units. Okay, all I have to do is just add another color. Whoops. Now I happen to already have these colors picked. So this is going to be group light. This is going to be group dark. The colors that I have are group light and group dark, and these are active. So now I just add them to to here. I add this again. I mean, this still needs some work. And I need to go over here and add a name. So I put it after shape. So it's going to be called group. Whoops. Group. And we're kind of done. Because here's my code with RGB group dark, active group dark, and it calculated them properly. So then at the end of a pretty short amount of work, you have an objective source of truth, like a drawing of your thought process about these colors.
It's useful. So you change the seed colors, you get color of the output. That's a lot of work in the beginning, but it saves
you a whole lot of time down the line, especially if you want to change something. And it also means that you don't need to use a lot of external tools or any external tools. You can do your whole system from concept to handoff to code in one tool, in one environment. And then when I finish the variable stuff that I'm redoing right now, you'll be able to have your whole design system in this one node window. And then there's also other stuff that I'll be adding in the future.